everybody, hope you're doing well. Before I get started on this video, I just wanted to say I absolutely loved that so many people responded to the poll that I posted on my community tab. If you don't know, I occasionally will post polls about what content you would like to see, so please check there for future updates. But many of you voted for the series The Wolf Among Us, as well as Tell Me Why. I've just installed Tell Me Why. I'm going to be playing it this weekend, and I'm hoping to get a video out about it soon. I've heard it's sort of a spiritual successor to the Life is Strange series. And if you want to interact with me a little more and sort of influence my content, I have both my Twitter and my newly created Instagram linked below, so please check that out, or just keep an eye out for the community posts on here. But today's video is about the Life is Strange franchise as a whole. The phrase Max Caulfield will return has become infamous within the Life is Strange fandom. It really kind of sums up the current state of the franchise. It sounds like something you'd hear at the end of a Marvel movie rather than a character-driven supernatural drama that is attempting to say something about the world and people. But it's looking like the Life is Strange series is going deeper and deeper into its own lore and trying to set up some faux interconnected universe rather than focusing on storytelling. And it's really frustrating to see because it's very clear how we got to this spot. Between fans that could never truly be pleased, as well as developers and studio heads who were only worried about the bottom line and wound up pleasing nobody at all, it's really clear how we got here. So today we're going to be examining every Life is Strange game and the steps taken to lead us to where we are today, and how Life is Strange was never meant to be a franchise. The first episode of Life is Strange released on January 30th, 2015, and subsequent episodes would come out throughout the rest of the year. The first Life is Strange game is very quaint. In this game, you play as Max, a teenager returning to her hometown. Using Max's sudden and unexplained supernatural abilities, you begin to unravel the mystery of the disappearance of Rachel Amber. And along the way, she reconnects with her best friend and Rachel's girlfriend, Chloe Price. The game is your sort of typical coming-of-age high school story. It features a lot of tropes typical of the high school drama. You've got the rich bully, you've got the cool teacher, you've got high and mighty rich girl who she cares about her fashion, and blah blah blah. One of the jokes I've heard about Life is Strange 1, and in particular its dialogue, is that it's how an adult French man thinks an American girl talks. Another big aspect of the game is that both of the lead characters are women, and at that, queer women. So there are all the themes and ideas of acceptance and change and discovering yourself that come along with it. And that's partially why the audience that first played this became so attached. Many people recount this as the first time they ever really saw queer media. I know a friend of mine who is very passionate about the series as well has told me that specifically. The other thing that made people so attached to this game was the overall tone. It's set up in the Pacific Northwest, right on the water. You've got this tiny town where everybody knows each other, there's mystery, it's cozy, it's sort of spooky too. It really takes a lot of inspiration from the TV show Twin Peaks, and this is not a mystery, this isn't a secret. The creators have been very, very open about this, and there's plenty of direct references to the series, such as Chloe's truck having the license plate Twin Peaks on it. Both shows feature a girl who disappeared that as the story unravels you learn more about her and how she wasn't as straight-laced and sort of normal as we thought, how she really got in with a bad crowd and that ultimately led to her death. There's also smaller similarities, such as the Two Whales Diner being very similar to the Double R Diner from the Twin Peaks series, the Dark Room being very similar to the Black Lodge which is sort of the mysterious antagonistic force throughout both series. So it's easy to see why Life is Strange 1 resonated so well with people, because it took tropes and ideas from other media, such as coming-of-age stories, such as supernatural shows, such as Twin Peaks, and married them together very, very well, and created characters that were easy to get attached to, and a world that was easy to fall in love with. It's no mystery as to why Life is Strange 1 did so well commercially and critically. If you were around in 2015 to 2016 on YouTube, plenty of YouTubers, I feel like just about everybody, was playing this game and discussing it, theorizing about what was going to happen in the next episode. And in fact, if you'd like to, I've covered the series before and all of the theories from that era in previous videos. In fact, those were my very first videos. And we're coming up on a year of this channel's existence. That's a whole other thing. We're not getting into that. We're not getting sentimental yet. But all that to say, Life is Strange 1 was a hit. Life is Strange 2 released on September 27th, 2019. This game was created by Don't Nod, the same people who created the first game. And that's very important to remember going forward, because we'll be introducing two different developers under Square Enix that worked on the series. And if you're familiar with my sort of the state of Life is Strange or what's next for Life is Strange videos, then I've somewhat discussed the transition of power, but I'm analyzing it in a different way this time around, so I would still pay attention. Life is Strange 2 follows the Diaz brothers, who are forced to flee after their father is killed in an incident of police brutality. The pair attempt to go to Mexico to try and reunite with some long-lost family. Life is Strange 2 hits on a lot of different themes than the first game. For example, having the two main characters be Hispanic boys changes a lot of what the game is trying to say. The game deals with heavy themes of racism within the United States, as well as the idea of what brotherhood means and what finding a family, or a pack, because it uses a lot of wolf imagery, really means. So while yes, it's still a coming-of-age story, it's very, very different than what the first game set out to do. The world itself is also very different. Gone is the cozy town of Arcadia Bay, although it does appear briefly in the story, just sort of as a nod, and I'll touch back on this sort of cameo thing later. But instead we get various different landscapes from throughout the United States. Whether it's the cold, snowy mountains or the desert, it's very, very unique and a much more sprawling sort of adventure. And this was sort of what Life is Strange was meant to be. To the creators, Life is Strange would be a anthology-based series with very loose connections to sort of kind of just nod at the other games and say, hey, these characters are still out there. But overall, each entry was meant to take a different aspect of life and explore it. The first game being set in such a small town following these two women, the next game being set across the country following this pair of brothers. So the original point, and what I mean by that's what Life is Strange was meant to be, is that it's meant to examine different people at different stages of their life and what they do when these supernatural powers sort of enter their life, and what they do when confronted with that. It's also meant to explore different themes, different groups of minorities, different ethnicities, different sexual orientations, gender identities. It was never meant to just be one series, one main character. It was always meant to be a sprawling but loosely connected series that explored what it meant to be a person in different environments. And so I say this as a fan when I say the fan reaction to this was very disappointing. Critically, the game was received very, very well, but financially it didn't do nearly as well as the previous entry, and fans were also somewhat divided on it. While there are certainly very valid criticisms with the game and its pacing, I'm not talking about those criticisms. Many people were just simply disappointed that the main characters of Max, Chloe, and the setting of Arcadia Bay weren't replicated or just didn't return. When they thought of Life is Strange 2, they thought, hey, a direct sequel to the beloved first game. Many of the people who fell in love with the first game had trouble relating to these characters who weren't very similar to them. a large portion of the Life is Strange fanbase is made up of queer women. I know that being a man in this fanbase, I am somewhat in the minority here. And this isn't meant to be an attack on anybody, I'm just simply stating the way that it went. Many people found it harder to relate and sort of missed the theme and the feeling and the atmosphere of that first game, rather than taking the second game for what it was. And as we say, comparison is the thief of joy, and this sort of led to a not so great sales reception of the game. Now, we're going to take a step back to 2017, when Life is Strange Before the Storm released. Now you might be wondering, why would I cover Life is Strange 2 on this sort of downfall type video before Life is Strange Before the Storm? And that's because I feel like you need the context of Life is Strange 2 and what it was trying to do in order to fully understand why I feel that Before the Storm was such a huge misstep for the series. Life is Strange Before the Storm was developed by Deck 9 and released in 2017. Deck 9 was brought in to develop this smaller scale Life is Strange game in the in-between time between Life is Strange 1 and Life is Strange 2. The game is a prequel that follows Chloe and explores her relationship with Rachel and sort of explains who Rachel was. It's kind of similar to how in Twin Peaks you had the movie Fire Walk With Me, which fully explored the character of Laura Palmer and filled in a lot of the blanks left by the show. However, instead of being considered an essential piece of media for the series like Fire Walk With Me, Before the Storm has sort of fallen by the wayside, and I think people underestimate how important it was for shaping the series as a whole going forward. Now, while the game has some inconsistencies with the lore, something I've covered extensively in my theories and deep dive videos, it was overall positively received. It didn't really blow anything out of the water, but I know a lot of people hold it near and dear to their heart. For me personally, I would have to say it's my favorite Life is Strange game. So I say this as a fan when I say that Life is Strange Before the Storm is the worst thing that could have happened to the series. Rather than pushing forward and expanding like Life is Strange 2 was going to attempt to, Before the Storm was a simple retread, bringing back safe characters and places that we liked and themes that were comfortable for the fanbase. Not to mention, it being made by a different developer made it sort of an echo, an imitation of the first game, rather than something new and unique that just happened to be in the same location. And ultimately, it made it just an okay but not great game in the eyes of many. Despite it not being a #1 all-time, better than the original type game, many still rank it above Life is Strange 2 for the simple fact that it includes characters from the first game, and because people have a lot of nostalgia for that first game. And I just want to clarify again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with liking this game or preferring it over 2. I'm simply talking in the context of the time and why Square Enix made the decisions that it had to make. Square Enix took note of the sort of love of the familiarity of the first game and the generally warm fan reception. So when Life is Strange 2 came out and fans constantly compared it to the first game and sales-wise it didn't do as well, they said to Don't Nod that Life is Strange 3 needs to be a much safer game. It can't be nearly as different as Life is Strange 2 was to the original game. Don't Nod disagreed and wanted to continue pushing the boundaries and telling different people's stories and trying to create a truly unique experience with each entry. And this sort of back and forth argument ultimately led to Don't Nod departing from the Life is Strange series and Square Enix, which led to Deck 9 becoming the full-time developer of the series. Life is Strange True Colors released on September 10th, 2021, and it was the first mainline game that was fully developed by Deck 9. And I oftentimes refer to this as Life is Strange 3. In fact, in a lot of the files for the game, you can find it labeled as Life is Strange 3. So if Don't Nod were to have stayed on board, the game would have likely been similar and just simply titled Life is Strange 3. However, once they left, and due to the sort of negative reception that Life is Strange 2 received, I believe that Square Enix was the one who decided to just say, drop the 2, drop the 3, let's just have it have a subtitle. In this game, you play as Alex Chen, who moves to a small town to reunite with her brother. But when he dies under mysterious circumstances, you are sent on this sort of mystery to solve what happened, while using Alex's powers of seeing people's emotions and kind of being able to read their minds as a way to get to the bottom of it. The game is solid. Admittedly, it's a very, very okay experience. I think the main character of Alex Chen is well written, but it ultimately just feels too dang safe. You have characters like Steph from Before the Storm returning, who makes references to Chloe, and there's even a DLC where Mikey from Before the Storm also returns, and they talk directly about Chloe. It's another small town where everybody knows each other, set in the forest, and it also has that similar murder mystery aspect and a twist villain. So overall, it seems like a recipe for success. In Square Enix's mind, Deck 9 was making a game that the fans wanted, a sort of return to form for the series, especially when contrasted against the large, sprawling epic that you would call Life is Strange 2. But here's the problem. Life is Strange 1 and Before the Storm, and even 2 to an extent, I wouldn't really consider AAA video games, especially the first one and Before the Storm. They had smaller budgets, smaller teams, the graphics weren't being pushed nearly as hard, and so I think the biggest misstep with this game, other than just simply being too safe, was the fact that it was given the AAA treatment. AAA marketing, AAA budget, AAA, full-on motion capture, things like that, and also a full AAA price tag. While critically it was considered okay, as I said, kind of very middle of the road, all things considered, for the series, fans were once again disappointed. Now, instead of the game being too big of a departure from the series, it was way too safe for fans. They felt that it didn't take any risks and that it fell flat because it was trying to capitalize on some of the older themes and older ideas. Other fans, once again, said it was too far removed from the first game and were disappointed that there wasn't some sort of cameo or, wink at the camera about Max or Chloe, even though there was. And while sales were good, they weren't AAA game good. And so this ultimately disappointed Square Enix once again. That finally brings us to Life is Strange Double Exposure, which released on October 29th, 2024. This is a game that I did a first impressions video for, and since then my opinion has really soured on it. I really have grown to dislike this game as time has gone on. In this game, Max Caulfield is back as our main character, but this time she's a professor at a school in this sort of snowy, wooded area. And when her friend Safi dies under mysterious circumstances, Max must use her supernatural powers to solve the mystery. Am I sounding familiar yet? This game, for the third time, follows a murder mystery format, where a main character dies or disappears, and our main character must use their supernatural powers to solve the mystery. This game was a desperate Hail Mary to those hardcore fans of the game who felt that every entry, no matter how safe, was too far removed from the first game. And it was also an attempt to the fans who felt that, hey, we need to continue to take steps forward in this series to try something different with the sort of flipping timelines, and you introduced other characters with powers and things like that. But in the end, it just ended up disappointing everybody. The murder mystery was frankly nonsensical after your first playthrough. When you play it again for a second time and make different decisions, you see that a lot of it doesn't really add up. The hardcore fans were disappointed that no matter what, you don't really see Chloe return in any form, and that her and Max break up off screen. And while I've said in the past I don't disagree with the decision to break up these characters, and I know I've gotten into some hot water with certain people over that opinion, but it is my opinion, I do agree with these fans that the difference between choosing if you sacrificed Arcadia Bay or sacrificed Chloe, I don't feel that either of those options nearly as fleshed out as they should have been, especially considering this is the first time we've seen this character return in years. So that is a place where me and those very hardcore only fans of Max and Chloe fans can really agree, is that I don't think this iteration of the game really took the time to respect the previous endings or really tie up any loose ends or do anything interesting with the fact that we're seeing Max after all this time. A lot of the new characters also felt really, really flat. They were all very, very one note, and while I liked some of them, beyond Safi, they just frankly weren't very interesting. The other thing is this game had some really predatory pricing, such as a cat DLC that really didn't involve anything in the game. It just gave Max a virtual cat that it was just really dumb, and there was no reason to charge that much for the game with cat DLC. That's ridiculous. That's like the horse armor. Square Enix also took the fans wanting more returning characters and more cameos way too seriously, and sort of set it up that we're going to be getting an Avengers type game where, oh, all these different people with powers are going to be assembling in the same game, and we're going to see returning characters and other people with powers, and Safi's still out there and we gotta stop her, blah 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 blah. It feels so corny and fan servicey. And you can see exactly how we got here, though, because people kept pulling in different directions, wanting it to be more bold, wanting it to be more conservative, wanting it to be more safe, just pulling in all sorts of different directions. So, what does it all mean? Well, it's exactly what I said. The Life is Strange series lacks a lot of direction, and it's very clear to see why. Between the original creator's vision being sort of tossed to the side purely for financial reasons, as well as the studio and producers being way too sensitive to fans and pushing and pulling and pushing and pulling, there was never any plan with where this series was going. They just played it by ear, and now they've written themselves into a corner because they've managed to make those who wanted a grounded character-driven drama, those who wanted the return of Max Caulfield and the return of all these characters we know and the tone from the first game, and casual fans, all of them are now disappointed with this sort of MCU knockoff where cameos seem to be more important than developing a coherent story. And I know this second half of the video has gotten a little more ranty and emotional, but it really is just disappointing because it's a series that I love, and I love each entry despite their flaws and despite the differences in philosophy behind the writing. But as a whole, this series is very disappointing. So who's to blame? Really, I don't think anybody's safe. The toxic fans rioting online about how their favorite character didn't show up is certainly not helping and giving the wrong impression to developers. However, the developers should have the wherewithal to understand what the goal of the series is and also how to play their cards right. If they didn't put True Colors and Double Exposure as AAA games, they would have been considered wildly successful with the sales that they made. But instead, they were too focused on the bottom line and wanting it to be the next big franchise, rather than a game series that is focused on people and stories and what it means to be a person and go through life challenges. Not that anyone cares, but if you ask me, I think a soft reboot is in order. Sure, keep it in the same world, you know, keep the same hot dog man stuff, maybe have a newspaper about Arcadia Bay, but overall, new town, new setting, new people, new powers, and just focus on telling a good story that happens to be a Life is Strange game. So, thank you so much for watching. Please comment below about what you think about the state of the series. Are you disappointed with where it's going? Are you almost excited for this over-the-top MCU-esque take on the franchise? Let me know in the comments below. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you, and I hope you have a good morning or evening or, you know, whatever.